Hello everybody, you have tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Greetings everybody. Okay, so today we're doing a little video here to kind of further explain the misrepresented facts by the Seventh Circuit Court majority in Brendan Dassey's on-bank review. Now, as you guys know, I've talked about the control question and what they said, or what they claim that the control question proves, and what the English language and the way that it works since, you know, forever, says otherwise. But today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about it later. We're going to first talk about the Innocence Project and what they brought up about the Seventh Circuit majority's decision in Brendan Dassey's case. And that was the way that they fiddled and played with the math in regards to the number of proved coerced confessions in comparison to the total number of confessions, the total number all throughout, right? So now understand the number of proven false confessions, proven ones, exonerees that it was proved with whatever evidence, you know, unimpeachable evidence, whatever it was proved with, that they were exonerated. There's a small number of those. Okay, there's a whole bunch, there's a big number of cases right now where there are confessions, but there may still be, who knows how many among those have false confessions. Because let's really be honest about it, folks. How many people are going to be fortunate enough to get the confession, the false confession that they gave, proven wrong and get exonerated? How many are going to, I mean, realistically, how many can we expect are going to be able to get out? So we already know that the number of known exoneration false confessions right now is going to be much less. Well, we know that at least we can infer with a certain amount of certainty that there's certainly a greater number amongst those who are in prison who falsely confessed. It stands to reason that there's still a significant number out there. It's just that they aren't able to prove that their confession was a false confession, and so they are still stuck in prison without anything to do about it. And they may never be able to prove that they falsely confessed. But what is important here, and what you're going to see, what the Seventh Circuit Court was trying to downplay and trying to make it seem less like trying to make false confessions seem less likely than they actually are. And you're going to see what they did here. The Innocence Project is going to explain it in their brief here. I'm going to show you this part of their brief where they talk about them fiddling with the math. And then we're going to come back and talk about it. I'm going to do a little demonstration of a math problem, basically, where I can show you what the Seventh Circuit was doing with their math in physical, you know, with actual representation on paper, where you can see the math and how it works, and why what the Seventh Circuit did creates the problem that it misrepresents the facts as it does. So I'm going to try to do that here today to show you a little bit of the math so that you can get your head around why it's an important, you know, misrepresentation. So here we go. In the proceedings below, the Seventh Circuit acknowledged that these studies might suggest an epidemic of false confessions, when even one is very troubling. Yet the court concluded that the incidence rate of false confessions is essentially zero. It did so based on its own calculation of the number of exonerees who falsely confessed as compared to the number of violent felons who pleaded guilty. A proxy, the court believed, for the number of all confessions. The court's math is flat wrong and badly misleading. As Judge Robner explained in dissent, defendants plead guilty in all manner of situations, often without being subject to coercive interrogation at all. By sweeping in all guilty pleas, even the cases without police interrogation, the court distorted how often police interrogation compels false confessions. Further, the court compared apples to oranges. In its numerator, the court counted only proven false confessions by exonerees. Exonerations having come predominantly in cases of rape or murder, just 2% of the felonies, and yet in the denominator the court included guilty pleas across all violent felonies. The numerator and denominator must be comparable, and of course the court included in its numerator only those false confessions who have been exonerated to date. The universe of people who falsely confess is undoubtedly larger than the subset of people who have confessed and then been fortunate enough to have been exonerated by objective, irrefutable evidence. There is every reason to believe the number of known false confessors will continue to mushroom. As the number of exonerations has swelled over the recent years, so too has the number of proven false confessions. In short, the empirical evidence of false confessions remains frightening, despite the Seventh Circuit Court's efforts to fiddle with the math. Okay, so what the Innocence Project was saying there is what the Seventh Circuit was doing was, in order to make confessions seem just less likely than they actually are, they were taking the number of known confessions from exonerations that are proven false confessions, and then what the Seventh Circuit did is instead of comparing that number against just the number of cases that have confessions or interrogations involved, the Seventh Circuit went ahead and went well beyond that, and took into account beyond that every case that was of a violent crime or whatever, even if there was no interrogation or any kind of questioning or any kind of confession at all. Okay, the Seventh Circuit was including all of that into like the total number in terms to see how likely it is, right? So to give you guys an illustration of how important that is, we'll do a little math problem here. So let's just go ahead just to make it easy. We'll use some nice round numbers so that it's easy for people to understand, right? So let's say that there was 100 proven false confessions, right? Going into this hearing, right? Okay, it's not 100 people, but just so that this is easy for people to see the illustration of the math here. So then let's say that the actual number of actual cases where a suspect was actually interrogated by somebody and that it actually could possibly involve a false confession, not just a crime that happened and there was never an interrogation that took place, but strictly crimes that involved an interrogation. Let's say that that's 200. Okay? So when we do the math on this, right, this comes out to, some people are already, guessing, already know what it is in their head, some people, but some people maybe don't do math well. I know I had a lot of friends that didn't, so I know this stuff's kind of hard to grasp. So what we know is that both of these numbers are divisible. You can divide them by 100. So when you divide them by 100, you get 1/2, right? Because you divide 100 by 100, you get 1. You divide 200 by 100, you get 2, right? So that's how it works. So now just look at this is the and this is not the same math as with the exonerations, but I want you to understand. So for a starting point, 100 and 200 brings us to 1/2. Okay, let's do it now where we have 100 known, obviously 100 known false confessions, and then let's say we're doing like the Seventh Circuit did, and we're including other cases, right? So let's go ahead and bump it up to 300, right? So instead of 100 over 200, it's gonna now be, because we're adding cases that don't have an actual interrogation involved. So we're gonna say it's 300. We're adding 100 cases that didn't have an interrogation involved. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. Put our little 300 there. Now, just like before, same math. Both of these numbers are divisible by 100. That's why we can do this easily. So we know that that comes out to 100 goes into 100 one time. Right. Okay, so we draw a 1. Make our little line, right? 100 goes into 300 3 times, right? Okay, 3. You understand what's just happened here? Okay? Just adding 100 to the denominator here has made it go down to where the false confessions now seem where it's only 1/3. Let me give you that in terms of a number. So we know 1/2 is 0.50. That is 1/2. 0.5 is half of 1. Okay? 1/3 is represented like this. So you see what was lost by adding 100 to the bottom number, the denominator. I just wanted to make that really clear for people to see. That's why that math is important. That's why adding in cases that didn't actually involve a confession drove the number down. It drove the number of actual, proven confessions and how likely they were, the percentage. That's what the Seventh Circuit was doing. They were playing with the numbers to make it seem less likely. And they were doing it deliberately because why would you involve cases that didn't involve an interrogation? You're playing with the numbers. Okay. If you don't believe me, if for some reason if you don't believe that, well, get this. Okay? Try to refute the English language and the way it works, because the fact of the matter is the state of Wisconsin, Tom Fassbender, has been claiming, oh, no, Brendan absolutely confessed. Look at the control question. Yeah. Look at the control question, Tom, or Hamilton, or any of the majority at the Seventh Circuit. Look at it again, guys. Okay. It starts out fine. Brendan resists. He says, I don't remember her having a tattoo, when they suggest that fake fact. And then Fassbender goes one step further and says, do you disagree with me when I say that? Now, what happens, I think you'll see. I'm going to play the video clip for you guys too. But I think what you'll see is Brendan immediately fears that they're going to start telling him he needs to tell the truth and all those things that they've been litany drum beating into his brain the whole time. He's afraid they're about to start telling him to be honest again and accuse him of lying, essentially, and everything. So he's just like, oh. So when Tom Fassbender asks him, do you disagree with me when I say that like that? I think it put fear into Brendan. He was like, no. Showed exactly how suggestive he is. Exactly how easy it was for him to flip-flop when he thinks in terms of trying to acquiesce and give his interrogator what they want. It shows that he is flip-flopping. I think he perceived, when Tom Fassbender said, do you disagree with me when I say that? I believe he perceived that as, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Now, it could be that Tom didn't mean to send that message, but Brendan was he was psychologically conditioned to things being a certain way during the interview. So this whole fake fact thing, he didn't understand that. He didn't even know it was a fake fact. I think he honestly just reacted when Tom Fassbender said, do you disagree with me when I say that? He just, I think, got scared and thought they were about to start telling him to be honest and blah, 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 blah. So that's my opinion. But we'll go ahead and, we'll look at right now the transcripts. Basically, in the decision of the Seventh Circuit Court, you'll see what the Seventh Circuit Court puts there. And then we'll play that part of the interrogation where you can see the actual video and the audio from the interrogation. And then we'll come on back one more time. Signaling that the investigators did not overwhelm his will, Dassey resisted repeated suggestions by both investigators that he and Avery had used wires and cables hanging in the garage to torture Teresa. The investigators also tested Dassey's suggestibility. They told him falsely that Teresa had a tattoo on her stomach and asked if he had seen it. Here's the exchange. Fassbender, did she have any scars, marks, tattoos, stuff like that you can remember? I don't remember any tattoos. Okay. We know that Teresa had a tattoo on her stomach. Do you remember that? Brennan shakes his head no and says, Fassbender, do you disagree with me when I say that? In other words, do you disagree with me when I say that she had a tattoo on her stomach? To which Brennan answers, no, I don't disagree with you. I don't know where it was. And Fassbender says, okay, that is clearly flip-flopping and going along with what Fassbender said. He started out saying, I don't remember a tattoo, saying, and shaking his head no. But then when Fassbender asks, do you disagree with me? Brennan should have said, yes, I disagree with you. That should have been the answer, yes. Had Brennan said, yes, but I don't know where it was, then we'd be a whole different story.
We know that Teresa had a tattoo on her stomach. Do you remember that? Do you disagree with me when I say that?
No, but I don't know what it was.
So, I don't know about everybody else, but the way the English language works in where I live is if I ask somebody, do you disagree with me? And they say no, that means they agree with me. Or, in this case, it means Brendan agreed with Tom Fassbender's fake fact. That's the way that works. So, as I said, and we're talking about learned judges here, people that had to go to a hell of a lot of school, law school. I'm sure there was all kinds of literature classes and English classes and math classes that they had to take. I'm sure that they weren't able to skirt these subjects. So it's a little bit odd to me that we could try to say it's an honest math mistake. No, it was a deliberate attempt to doctor the numbers. That's what that was. That's pretty sketchy. I mean, and these are judges. This is our criminal justice system here. And we got judges misrepresenting facts in decisions. Why do they feel... I mean, the one thing that I sit here when I look at it, after time, I mean, I remember looking at the control question and what they said in their original decision. I mean, it infuriated me. But over time, I'm looking at it and thinking, why do they really feel the need to do that? Especially now that what we find out about this whole thing that they were doing with the math. Why did they feel the need to do these things? Why are they misrepresenting the facts in their decision? What made them feel that they needed to do that? I don't know. I'm just curious. I mean, I obviously could guess and make, accusations or whatever, but I mean, I'm curious what was in their minds that made them think, you know what, guys, let's just put this in the decision. Even though it's inaccurate. But then again, maybe they thought nobody would ever know. Maybe they figured that the en banc would be the end of it, and they didn't think Brendan's lawyers would try to go to the Supreme Court, or even if they did, maybe they figure that Brendan will fail. We'll have to see what happens here, but I think there's a lot of interest in this case. So, it's not likely that it's just gonna get skirted or swatted down by the Supreme Court, because I think they're obviously gonna have some awareness of how important this case has gotten for people, and that how many people are paying attention. So they may, I think that mainly Brendan's case is gonna get looked at just because it's caused so much controversy and it's caused so many people to have an opinion about false confessions. So that's kind of my feelings about it, folks. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see ya.